How we doing, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my Game 1 takeaways from the NBA Finals and what I expect to see in Game 2. Going to be speaking about the big East versus West matchup in Major League Baseball between the Los Angeles Dodgers and my New York Yankees. Yankees had a tough night. I'm going to dive into what went down over there. I'm going to give you my Stanley Cup Finals prediction. And I'm also going to hit you with some NFL news, notes, and rumors, and at minimum, some cool memes. I'm going to start it up with Major League Baseball. Los Angeles Dodgers put up massive first inning and set tone for the game against the Yankees. They basically kicked Luis Severino out of the game early. Aaron Judge went 0 for 4, kind of a rarity for him. And Josh Donaldson and Giancarlo Stanton literally provided the Yankees with all the offense. They hit 3 combined home runs in their first game back off of the injured list. 8-4 victory in favor of the Dodgers. If I'm looking for a positive to take away from my team, the Yankees, I think I would have to say that despite giving up 6 in the early going, and it got lopsided very early, the bullpen only gave up 2 runs for the remainder of the game. So from innings 2 to 9, you give up 2 runs. More times than not, you think you win a game like that. Obviously, you don't expect to have that kind of number put up in the first. A concern of mine was Donaldson and Stanton reasserting themselves in the lineup. Oddly enough, I said my concern was they could slow down the offense. They were the only 2 that provided any kind of a punch yesterday. But I do believe that even in a game where you're down by such a substantial amount, pitchers, in this case Clayton Kershaw, could throw a couple of meatballs over the middle that maybe in a closer game it wouldn't happen. I kind of view it as being a little complacent with a lead. But at no time last night do I think the Los Angeles Dodgers were in trouble. Yankees just got to get up off the mat, take the ass whooping, and worry about the game tonight. And, all in all, I think the Yankees relatively in a good place. I also think that the Los Angeles Dodgers are proving that they are definitely a force in the National League. They're not ready to surrender that West. A lot of people had the Padres as the favorites in that division this year. And, approaching the All-Star game in roughly a month, I would have to say that the Dodgers and the Braves are the class of the National League. I think, excuse me. I'm sorry. I think in the American League, I think there's more teams that are going to be competing. Yankees are one of probably 5. And I do believe that 3 to 4 of those teams actually reside in the American League East. I'll keep that to 3. NBA Finals, my takeaways from Game 1 and what I expect to see in Game 2. Game 1 was a couple of nights ago. Game 2 will be Sunday. First bit of news in regards to this series. Tyler Hero for the Miami Heat may be returning tonight. I would think a worst-case scenario, Game 3, which would be the first game in Miami. But given the way that Miami was never truly in the game in Game 1, I would have to say that if you're a Heat fan, if you're Coach Eric Spoelstra, if you're Jimmy Butler, you want Hero to play tonight. I think he brings an element to Miami's offense that could shorten the gap on the advantage that Denver has. I mean, in my opinion, Denver has the best player in the league right now. And I also think Denver just has a better roster. Eric Spoelstra has worked serious magic with the Miami Heat rotation and getting the most out of a lot of players that possibly elsewhere would not necessarily get these kind of meaningful minutes in a lot of rotations. But in order for the Miami Heat to win tonight, I'm going to say 3 things need to happen. Number 1, Jimmy Butler needs to have that kind of signature game. Number 2, the team on the whole has to do a better job on the glass. They have to do a better job on offensive spacing, and they've got to shoot the ball better. Thirdly, I think you really need Tyler Hero to play tonight. But I expect a better performance from Miami in Game 2. What I noticed in Game 1, it just seemed like the Nuggets were never truly in trouble. I think they were enjoying kind of like a low-resistance defensive attack from Miami where they weren't playing disciplined defense. I think Miami was exploited by Denver in a lot of areas. Denver had better floor spacing, better passing, and in my opinion, they got the meaningful buckets and the meaningful rebounds. And I think what's scary, if you're a Miami Heat fan, is that Jokic only had 14 points in this ball game. He didn't have to have the all-world, ridiculous stat line to help his team win convincingly. And while I don't expect Jokic to only score 14 points at any other game in this series, it speaks volumes of how good Denver is as a team. Miami, if they don't win tonight, is in legitimate trouble. But I will say this. If Miami gets that first one, this could be a series. My prediction on my show was 4-1. I softened it to 4-2. I think this is a winnable game for the Miami Heat, but they need those key things to happen, what I mentioned, at least 3 of those 4 things, if they're going to pull off the Game 2 upset Sunday in Denver. My Stanley Cup Finals prediction, Vegas Golden Knights 4, Florida Panthers 3. I think the reason why I like Vegas in this series is because, oddly enough, I think Florida might actually go into this series possibly a little too comfortable, a little too confident, and it's odd to think that an 8 seed would approach a finals round like this. I did mention on previous shows that I do think the gauntlet in the Eastern Conference was a lot tighter, a lot tougher, a lot more rigorous than that in the West. But ultimately, I think where Vegas has the legitimate edge, I just think they overall have a better offense. I think you can make a case that they also have better goaltending. And I believe what's going to happen here is it's going to come down to speed and just puck handling. And I think the Golden Knights might have a legitimate edge over the Florida Panthers. This has the makings of a very classic Stanley Cup Finals. I do think that all in all, weaknesses versus strengths, these teams match up incredibly evenly. I don't think too many people had the Panthers here. Vegas, on a lot of people's preseason predictions, they were amongst the favorites to win the West. I think with the defending Cup champion Colorado Avalanche having so many injuries, it really made the West a crapshoot in a lot of ways, because I think a healthy Colorado team could have been right here again. But as far as Game 1 goes, I've got the Knights winning that 3-2. But I think you're looking at a 7-game series, and I think you're looking at a lot of games that could get opened up where we're going to see some high-scoring affairs. Not necessarily for Game 1, but I got this thing going 7, and I got the Golden Knights winning their first Stanley Cup. NFL news, notes, and rumors. This was kind of the subject of some humor to me. Daniel Bellinger's arms. The meme is pretty hilarious when you see how big his arms have gotten amongst the guys. A lot of my contributors on the show were goofing around over group text saying how, oh, he's going to get drug tested and this and that. But oddly enough, one of the most common pictures that was on social media was not Daniel Bellinger. It was a picture of a former Giant fullback who was no longer on the roster that they were trying to compare it to. So I don't necessarily think that there's anything to see here other than just some good humor. Yannick Ngakwe's next team. I did want to speak on this. He has been a very good player for quite some time now, but he has not necessarily gotten the financial commitment from any team in terms of years to stay somewhere for a long time. I think to a level, it's kind of given him the reputation as a bit of a mercenary. When I look at some of the teams that have the affordability to offer him a longer deal and give him that kind of stability to be in one place for a while, the team that stands out to me is actually the Chicago Bears. The Bears made a lot of moves this year. Justin Fields, I think if you're a Bears fan, you're expecting him to take that next step and that next leap. And I do believe that's a very real possibility. They definitely spent some money. They definitely are excited about this season. Now that Aaron Rodgers has a new address, I think the thinking around the NFC North is that the days of it completely being Green Bay's division are over. That already started to take a step back with Minnesota winning last year. I think this is one of the more wide open divisions in the NFL. Now, while I don't necessarily consider Chicago a contender, and Ngakoue did say that that was important to him, I do believe that the years that Chicago might be able to provide might sway him to go there. If we're talking about a team that could potentially be a little closer, I would say keep an eye on the Cincinnati Bengals as well as the Baltimore Ravens, both AFC North foes. I believe that one of those teams could come in and scoop up Yannick and give him a nice deal. Been some rumors that if Dalvin Cook is to move on from the Minnesota Vikings, that he might have softened his stance on the potential of sharing the backfield with his younger brother, James Cook, Buffalo Bills. I think this is still a two-team race should Dalvin become available, and those two teams play in the same division. It's either going to be the Miami Dolphins or the Buffalo Bills. As a football fan, I think it would be really cool to see two brothers sharing the backfield, chasing a common goal, which is winning a Super Bowl. Buffalo, although their window might be closing a little, still considered a top 6 team in the NFL. Definitely a team that could be in the conversation for the Super Bowl. But, you know, when you have the Cincinnati Bengals, who have emerged as an AFC powerhouse, as well as the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, I would say at best case scenario, just going in before any games are played, Buffalo is probably the third best in the conference. And you also got to make a mention of a potentially emerging Los Angeles Chargers team, as well as the Jacksonville Jaguars. AFC is ultra competitive, and it's going to be exciting to see how all that plays out. And obviously, you got a 4-time league MVP in New York, talking about Mr. Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets. And speaking of the Jets, a former New York Jet who has kind of just been in the wrong place at the wrong time for a huge chunk of his career. I'm talking about Sam Darnold. He's got an interesting potential opportunity in San Francisco. 49ers, 1 game shy of the Super Bowl last season. And when you look at Jimmy G, he has moved on to Vegas. There could be some interesting scenario there. If he's not healthy, the provisions of the contract, he could be voided, that contract, if he's not healthy. They moved on from Jimmy G. They made a big trade for Trey Lance a couple years ago where they moved a lot of draft capital. Trey Lance got hurt in the first month of the season. Jimmy G played for a while. He was injured. Enter Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy had quite the story. Unfortunately for him, he had a UCL injury prior to the NFC title game. That's one of the motivational factors as to why you're going to have 3 active quarterbacks now without a penalty for the extra quarterback on each team's roster this year. Because with such a highly rated game, nobody wanted to see a guy like Josh Johnson, no offense to him, be in that situation, a team being so unprepared for a scenario where quarterbacks got injured like that. And there was some controversy pertaining to Jimmy G that he could have potentially played, but given the way the 49ers did him, I don't think he wanted to do them any favors. But where I'm getting at here when talking about the quarterback position is, with the injury Purdy has, there's no guarantee on when he will return. In addition to that, Trey Lance, in the limited bit of football he has played, it was like basically a typhoon, just horrible, horrible weather in Chicago. They lost that game. He hasn't done anything yet in this league to prove that he could be a starter, is what I'm getting at. You enter a guy like Sam Darnold. You talk about a play caller like Kyle Shanahan. And I think that just from attrition alone, Sam Darnold possibly could be looking at the best chance in his entire football career. And with the 49ers being a legitimate Super Bowl contender, I guess my question to you, the viewer, is, can Sam Darnold be the last man standing in Frisco, gain the confidence of the offensive coordinator, of the head coach, of the organization, and take the 49ers to their elusive 6th Super Bowl victory? When I think about the kind of offense they run and the kind of multitude of weapons they have, you have Deebo Samuel, who a couple of years ago was their main running back. He's now doing what he does best, which is be a wide receiver. Enter Christian McCaffrey as your main back. He is a 3-down, every down back. If he's healthy, probably the best in the game. Alongside Debo, you got Brandon Ayuk. You have George Kittle, who is still, in a lot of people's estimations, a top 5 tight end. And you have a phenomenal defense led by Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw. This is a team that's in win-now mode. But I do believe that with the coaching, with the play calling, and with the abundance of all-stars that he has around him, Sam Darnold can win and kind of flip the script and change the narrative of his career, similar to what Geno Smith did this past season in Seattle. Oddly enough, Seattle is going to be a team that is going to be fighting the 49ers for the West crown. And I look at the NFC, and of course, this is not including preseason. Injuries unfortunately happen in the preseason. You've got a 49er team, Super Bowl ready potentially. You've got a Philadelphia Eagle team that came close to beating the Chiefs last year in the big game. You got a Dallas Cowboys team that has one of the best defenses in the NFL. And this is a make or break year for Dak and head coach Mike McCarthy. You have a New York Giants team. Brian Daboll, coach of the year last season. Can they take the next step? And of course, the aforementioned Seattle Seahawks are going to be a factor as well. The NFC is going to be a very interesting conference. And football in general, a lot of unanswered questions. And I think the Aaron Rodgers factor, him going to the Jets, there are just so many storylines. So it's going to be a very exciting football season. But I'd like for you guys to get at me and let me know what you think, if I'm making some sense on Sam Darnold having the potential to rewrite his career and be a winner with the 49ers. I know my good friend and supporter of the show, contributor to the show, Ryan Shedd, diehard 49er fan. I will probably hear from him on this topic. I'm going to be getting out of here for now. I will be giving you guys announcements about our next show. Until next time, I am Richie, and I appreciate you guys listening today, and I hope you have a phenomenal weekend. Take care, everyone.